I was there like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna boss through this, that doesn't even hurt, like barely hurts, barely hurts. And then 3 hours later I ended up Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is the long-awaited labour and delivery story. I'm talking long-awaited, like Lila Rose is 4.5 months now, so sort your life out, Lottie. Let's get it together and let's finally get into this video. So I've got everything written down because even if this was filmed a day after giving birth, everything was quite fuzzy and I had to just go through with Rick step by step of what actually happened so that I am definitely giving you the right information. So if I keep looking down, it's because I am trying to refer back to that, so I'm giving you exactly what happened. So I don't know what it's like for other countries, but in the UK you aren't allowed to go past 12 days overdue. So I was booked for an induction way before, just to make sure, at the 12-day mark. And about a week before that date I was talking to my midwife and just saying, like, I really feel uncomfortable with going for an induction. It's just something that I really want to try and avoid. I want her to come naturally. So she actually said to me that if I wanted to, I could cancel and wait another couple days after that just to see if Lila Rose wanted to come naturally. It got to 2 days before the induction and I just knew, I absolutely knew that she was just not coming naturally. I don't know how I knew, but I just could feel that she was just not coming naturally, though she was just too happy. So I decided that I would definitely do the induction on the 12th day, even though I was so scared. But by that time I was just so ready to have my baby. So we went in on the Friday, that was induction day, and the first thing they do is they have a little look at you, look down in your new area, try and feel for your cervix and see what's going on down there basically. I got told that my cervix was really rock hard. It was not ready at all, so there was no way she was coming anytime soon naturally, and I was only 1 centimetre dilated, which had happened naturally over the course of time, which is quite normal. So after their first examination, the first thing they do is give you a pessary, which I think is a little tablet form, not the gel form. It was just the first pessary, and that goes inside of your new, let's call it. So if you don't know how an induction works, you have one pessary that is for 24 hours, you have a second pessary that lasts 6 hours, and then you have a third pessary that lasts another 6 hours. And then if you still haven't gone into labour from your last pessary, then you then end up on a drip. So the idea of each pessary is that it just gets your cervix to open. It obviously tries to kickstart the labour. I was told that the first pessary, to not expect anything for a first time mum. There is just not really any chance that I would get any feelings. So for me, having the pessary put in didn't really hurt. I can't really explain it. If you've ever had a sweep, it is like having a sweep. For me, it wasn't a very nice thing and it wasn't very comfortable, but I don't remember being in a lot of pain. So after that first pessary, I then got monitored for an hour just to see if anything was happening, and half an hour after I was given it, I started contracting, and you could actually see that on the monitor, and it kind of just came as like a little bit of a tummy cramp, and I just kind of felt a bit strange with it. There was no pain or anything. I just remember thinking like something's coming, and then it goes again. We got told, because we were close to home, that we were actually allowed to go home if we were more comfortable for that first 24 hours. So that is what we did. We had all our bags packed, we went in there, and then after this first pessary we actually ended up bringing all our bags back and we stayed the first night at home. I carried on contracting and getting this period cramping feeling until 4 in the morning, and it did get more intense. It was a lot like a period cramp, and when I do get period cramps I end up getting really nauseous. I end up getting hot sweats and faint. I do not deal with period cramping brilliantly, just my whole body just gets nauseous and unhappy, and that's exactly what happened that night. I wouldn't say it was painful. To me it was just like dealing with a period, but obviously that's not a nice thing to deal with. So I couldn't sleep and I ended up being up until 4 in the morning, and then that's when they actually died out. When I woke back up in the morning there was still nothing. Everything had calmed down, and we went back in. They did another internal examination and I was still 1 centimetre dilated, and my cervix had softened slightly, but it was very far back and it was just not ready at all. So they decided that I needed the second pessary to kickstart again. So again, after the second pessary I did start contracting on the monitor, but I actually didn't feel anything in myself, which was actually quite lovely because I didn't really want to go through the cramping stage again. You could actually see on the monitor for an hour that I was contracting up and down, and they actually did look like quite strong contractions, but I in myself didn't feel anything at all. I was just quite comfortable. We were walking around, we could do whatever we wanted in the hospital as long as you were back by that 6-hour mark. And they examined me again, and I was, I think, 1.5 centimetres by then, so I hadn't really dilated, but they did say my cervix was very soft. So they said there is a chance that I could get my waters broken, but my cervix was very far back, so during the breaking the waters process they told me that they would have to actually try and drag my cervix forward. So at the time there was a massive wait to go onto the labour ward because one of the other wards had been closed down, so everybody was kind of like backlogged. So anybody that wasn't actually in labour had to stay in the induction ward. That's what happened to us. We ended up staying in there for a day and a half, I think it was. It's just not how you really expected. Like, you go in thinking that you're coming out with a baby, and it was like a day and a half of just like playing Uno and playing games on our phone and walking around the hospital a million times over. But I'm very glad I wasn't uncomfortable, because I ended up sleeping, and at 5 o'clock in the morning they came and got us from the labour ward. They woke me up, and I think I was so anxious that I kind of like jumped and was like they could tell that I was like jumped out my skin, and I was really scared. It just took me a long time to fall asleep, and I think when they woke me up I was like, no, I'm not ready to go and have my waters broken. I'm just not ready. But yeah, so we went up to the labour ward. They do another examination there to see how things are going. I think everything was pretty much the same, and then they said, right, we're going to go ahead with breaking your waters. So I opted to have gas and air because one of my friends just said go for gas and air, it's just a lot more comfortable. I love that stuff. I was literally asking them if I could take it home while I was like literally I felt like I was getting high. It was amazing. It was so good. Before they broke my waters, I opted for the gas and air, and I had it on me. They just let me take a few deep breaths until I knew it was in my system. Oh, I just absolutely loved it. I could feel them kind of moving around, but I felt no pain. It was absolutely lovely experience to just like be out of it. It was really nice. And then she actually told me that she was going to like take the little hook and try and pop them, so that's what she did. So that didn't actually work, and they didn't actually pop the waters at all, so we ended up having to have them popped a second time. So again, I was there on the gas and air quite happily, and that time it really did run. So we did the same thing. I think we had to go for a walk for an hour that time, and it was just it was like a waterfall. It was quite a nice feeling actually, just kind of like gushing out. So yeah, that was really nice. So the idea is that like for an hour you're walking around and you're just trying to get that labour started naturally as much as possible. Obviously Lila Rose just wasn't going anywhere, to be honest. So I ended up coming back, and I got put on the drip, which I was really nervous for. I am pretty good with needles, but I just don't like the thought of anything being in my system, so this is why I just didn't want an induction at all. I wanted to labour naturally, but it was actually fine. I opted for the gas and air to have it all put in my arm and everything that they needed to do, which was just lovely. They were so good. They just let me do what I wanted and what I needed to get through it all. So when the drip first got put in, I was there bouncing on a gym ball like, yeah, let's get this going, let's get this going. And you could see on the monitor that I was getting a few contractions, and I was feeling it like a period cramp. It was coming, it was getting a bit more intense, and then it was going, but it wasn't painful. And I was like, yeah, I'm bossing this. Like, if this is what it's like it showed on the monitor that the contractions were quite intense. So I was there like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna boss through this. That doesn't even hurt, like barely hurts. And then 3 hours later, I ended up being like, I'm in so much pain. I was on the gas and air, and to be honest, now I'm actually talking to you about it, I can't actually tell you what it felt like. I can't even remember being in pain. All I can remember is I had the gas and air, and I was actually biting down on it, kind of like curling over and just being like, this is getting really painful. And so they gave me the option of the epidural if I wanted it. And I got really emotional, and I just said, like, if I have an epidural, I feel like I'm failing, because I kept getting told that natural labour is just amazing and it's the best thing, but I wanted to enjoy my labour. I wanted to enjoy every part of it and remember every part of it, not be in pain and struggling and not enjoying what should be the most exciting time of our lives. So I opted for the epidural, and I think it took about half an hour for them to get to me. It all went in fine. Oh, it was lovely. It was just like a release, just an absolute release. And to be honest, I spent 8 or 9 hours just in and out of sleep. We had the TV on, watching The Chase. I then remember waking up, our lovely midwife was like, in an hour's time we're actually going to start you pushing. I was like, what? Are you kidding? And she was like, yeah, so get as much rest as possible and I'll wake you up in an hour. I pushed in a couple different positions, but I found one position the most comfortable, and that was kind of like sat up on the bed with like my legs outwards, and that was really comfortable, almost like a little squat position. All the way through, Lila Rose's heart was just really happy. She seemed very content in there. There were a couple times where they were worried that her heart rate had dipped, but it was because every time I had a contraction. I think it was tightening her, so her heart rate was getting a little bit uncomfortable, but then as soon as my contraction stopped, her heart rate went back to normal. So they weren't actually worried. They said that she was very content in where she was. So the pushing went really well. It's a very strange experience if you have an epidural, because you can't really feel what you're doing at all, but you can tell when the contractions are coming. So they just said every time you start to feel a contraction, which obviously isn't painful, but you can feel a slight build up, then let me know and I will tell you when to push, how to push, what to do. I'd be there squatting down, going bright red in the face, and you basically have to push down as if you're trying to do a poo, but you can't really feel exactly what you're doing, so you kind of just as much as possible. An hour later, she could put about this much of her fingertip in. There's my nail, but this much of her fingertip in, and she said she can feel her head, and she was trying to come out and she was moving, but her head was turned in an awkward position. So she said there was two different options. I could either carry on pushing for 20 minutes or I could go ahead and go into surgery with some forceps. I opted for forceps because I thought that that is quite a common thing for people to have, and I was getting quite tired by this point after pushing for an hour. So off into theatre I went. I was still getting pumped with my epidural, so I didn't feel anything. So she was trying to see that if the baby's head would twist, then they could obviously use forceps to get her out. And her head was just firmly placed in the position that she wanted to be. She was just a stubborn little girl like she is now. And so they called in this woman that had just finished her 12-hour shift and she had already gone home. So I had to literally wait there with everybody around me with my legs up in stirrups for about 20 minutes until this woman came in, because she was one of the like top experts. So they wanted to give me the best chance of having her like naturally. So there's me with like my legs up in the air, everyone's talking to me, trying to make conversation, like my nunu's like out on show to everybody. It was very awkward, but I think you get to the point where you're like, oh, let's just chat about anything and who cares. So then this woman came in, she gave it a really good go with trying to turn her head, and she was like, I am really sorry, but her head is so firmly placed and it is in such an awkward position. So she said, I'm really sorry, but we're actually going to have to push her back up inside of you and you're going to have a cesarean. I didn't burst into tears, but I got very tearful and I was just a bit upset that I wasn't going to be able to have her naturally when we were so close. Like, she was literally near enough out. The cesarean itself was very strange feeling. Like, I can't really tell you what it feels like. I can't really remember exactly, but I do remember at the time I was feeling no pain, but I could feel something going on. I could feel like tugging, and obviously that's just uncomfortable because you're like, well, okay, what's going on down there? Like, I'm somebody that likes to be in control, but obviously the screen goes up and you just kind of have to get on with it. I think in myself, because I had never considered that I could have a cesarean, I think I ended up going quite numb. I was just a bit overwhelmed. Can't tell you how long I was being cut open and they were getting on with things, but I do remember them saying that she was kind of stuck. She was very like tightly packed in there, and they also did say that my placenta had started rotting away. So by this time I was 16 days over, so it was like really time for her to come out now. And if I actually left the induction a couple days later, it actually wasn't going to be a very good outcome. So then 2:35 in the morning, Rick says to me, can you hear that? And I'm like, hear what? Can you hear her crying? I think then I came back down to earth and I could start hearing like a faint cry. It was very strange, like everything kind of went a bit fuzzy. I think they took her out and they had to give her a good clean and they had to make sure that everything was okay with her, and then they passed her over to me and she got put on my chest. I'm getting a bit emotional talking about this, but actually at the time I wasn't emotional at all. I was very overwhelmed. I'll put some pictures on the screen now. You can see it, that I was just very overwhelmed. I didn't get that massive like emotional happiness and excitement that I thought I was going to have when she got put on my chest. Instead, I felt very overwhelmed. I could still feel that they were starting to try and stitch me back up, which again didn't hurt. Obviously it's just nothing that I expected. So for me, I was just a bit overwhelmed of like, what's just happened? How has that all just happened? And now she's on my chest. Also, I think because I pictured her coming out naturally and me being able to see her come out and be put on my chest, and I had pictured that for 9 months. When it didn't quite happen that way, it felt like to me she got pulled out of like a cupboard where they keep a load of babies and they're like, right, yeah, there's your baby, like congratulations, instead of like actually being able to see her. And also the first thing she did when she got put on my chest was do this sloppy poo all the way down me, and I think she peed as well, and I was like covered in it. So it was like, okay, welcome to the world, thank you for that. Straight down on me. But when she got handed over to Rick for Rick to hold her, and I was looking over. I remember looking over at him. He was like kind of over on a chair, and I just started welling up. To see him get really emotional made me really emotional. She was extremely healthy, extremely happy. She was such a content baby, which is why there was no way she was coming out on her own. So I think overall an induction for me was definitely very suited to me as a person. I always pictured that labour would be very fast paced, and I like to be in control. I like to know what's going on. I would actually opt for a cesarean again, to be honest. I also wouldn't mind having an induction again, because it was just, for me, it was a really nice one, to be honest. It was relaxed. A lot of us worry for like 9 months straight that something's going to happen in labour, or just even just about the labour, just being in so much pain. It is true, you look back and it is such a small little dot in your rearview mirror. I can't even remember what the pain felt like. So that is everything for today's video, and I'm sorry that it's probably quite a long video and I've probably been rambling for a very long time, but there's so much detail in that. So if you like this video and you like this story time, then please give me a thumbs up so that I know whether to do more of these or not. If you haven't subscribed to me already and you'd like to, then please don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you leave, because it really helps to support my channel. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!